So dear students, how are you? I am VN Misra from Sadhguru Inter College Samara Barabanki. And dear students, as you know, we were reading the lesson from the Snapshots book, lesson number 2, and the name of the lesson is The Address by Margamiko. Dear students, we have studied the first part of this lesson, and I know that you have prepared the first part very carefully and sincerely. Now, let us read the second part of this lesson. Dear students, as you know, we were taking the pattern of explaining the text in detail. We were taking difficult words for their meanings and explanation. Besides, we were taking questions and answers. And today, I will introduce you all these points, including some more important questions. The lesson is going to be very interesting and important. But before we start with the lesson, let me tell you what will you gain after reading this lesson. Dear students, the present lesson means the second part will enable you to explain the text. It will enable you to use words and phrases in your daily life. It will enable you to answer the questions of this lesson. And besides, it will enhance your reading and reasoning skills. Dear students, therefore, be careful and listen to me very attentively. Dear students, before we begin with the text, let us recall the first part that we have read. Dear students, let us summarize the first part for better understanding. In the first part, we have read that the narrator, who is the writer herself, was afraid that her family might be sent to a shelter house during the Holland War. And so, there would be no safety of her valuables at her own house. Dear students, so she gave her valuables and antiques to one of her friends named Mrs. Darling. Remember this name? Mrs. Darling. So that those valuables might be kept safe at the house of Mrs. Darling. Later, when the war was over and the narrator's mother was no more in this world, one day the narrator decided to take back those valuables and antiques her mother had given to Mrs. Darling. So the narrator went to the house of Mrs. Darling. But Mrs. Darling denied to recognize the narrator. Mrs. Darling denied to recognize the narrator. The narrator returned from the house of Mrs. Darling, and then she began to think of her past. Later, once more, the narrator went to Mrs. Darling's house. This time, the daughter of Mrs. Darling opened the door. Dear students, tell me, do you remember house number? Means the house number of Mrs. Darling. Yes, you remember 46, house number 46. And can you tell the name of the street? Yes, the name of the street, Marconi Street. So dear students, now let us start with the text on page 13, that is on your screen. I followed the girl along with the passage. An old-fashioned iron Hanukkah candle holder hung next to a mirror. We never used it because it was much more cumbersome than a single candlestick. I followed means she went behind. Along the passage means along the way. An old-fashioned iron Hanukkah. Now listen to me carefully. Hanukkah actually is a Jewish light festival as we celebrate Diwali. Here it refers to candle holder in which you can put so many candles together. Okay. So there was an old-fashioned Hanukkah next to the mirror, means after the mirror. We never used it because it was much more cumbersome, means the narrator says that she did not use this Hanukkah because it was very heavy, so it was not convenient for her to use it. Won't you sit down? Asked the girl. She held open the door of the living room. Means she opened, means the girl opened the door of the living room and asked the narrator to come in. The narrator says, I went inside past her, means after that she went into the room. I stopped horrified. Then at a place, she was horrified and she stopped. I was in a room. I knew and I did not know. She said to herself that she was in a room, she knew and she did not know. Why does she say so? Be careful. Think and tell. Okay, I tell you. There are two basic reasons for it. She says, I knew. Just after that, she says, I did not know. She knew because all those things were closely associated with her life, past life. And now they were in the house of another person. Therefore, she says, so one more thing is there, one more reason is there. That is, she was now detached from all these things. Therefore, she says, I knew and I did not know. Then further, I found myself in a midst of things I did want to see again, but which oppressed me in a strange atmosphere. Means she wanted to see all those things. And now those things were put in a strange atmosphere which she did not like to see them in that atmosphere. Because of ugly furniture or the muggy smell, means there was the smell of dampness and the furniture was very ugly, means not beautiful. Ugly means not beautiful. Smell means smell of dampness. I don't know, but I scarcely dare to look around me. I don't know, but I scarcely dare to look around me, means she does not know. She says that she does not know why, but she hardly looked around herself. The girl moved a chair, means the girl offered a chair. I sat down and stared at the wooden cloth table. Now almost everything of that room was familiar to this girl. Therefore, she was looking everything intently. Means she saw the wooden tablecloth. Okay? Because she had used this cloth. I rubbed it. My fingers grew warm from rubbing. Means her fingers grew warm because of rubbing, continuous rubbing. I followed the lines of the pattern. Means she was searching for something. Therefore, she was following the lines of the pattern. Somewhere on the edge, there should be a burn mark that had never been repaired, because she was well familiar that there was a mark of burning on this tablecloth, and she was searching for it because this burn mark was not repaired. My mother will wake soon, means said the girl. Means the daughter of Mrs. Darling told the narrator that her mother would return soon. I have already made tea for her. Will you have a cup? Means the girl told that she had prepared tea for her mother, and she also offered a cup of coffee to the narrator. Thank you. The narrator thanked her. I looked up. The girl put cups ready on the tea table. Means she put the cups, tea cups on the table. She had a broad back, just like her mother. Means like her mother, she also had a broad back. She poured tea from a white pot. Means she poured tea, and the pot in which the tea was there was of white color, and it was a gold border on the lid. Means the lid of this pot was of gold. Remember this, there will be question. I remember she opened the box and took some spoons out. Means the girl opened the box and took out some spoons. That's a nice box. I heard my own voice. Means the girl whispered to herself. Means she says that she heard her own voice. Means in her mind she said, that's nice box. It was strange voice, as though each sound was different in this room. Now she felt that everything was different. Even the voice of herself was different in the room. because the things were disturbed, means were put in disturbed manner. Oh, you know about them, she said. Sorry, she had turned round and brought me my tea, means the girl offered the narrator her tea. She laughed. My mother says it is antique. We have got lots more, means now this girl of 15 years, who was the daughter of Mrs. Darling, began to explain those costly things of our house. What did she say? My mother says antique, we have got lots more, means she told the narrator that she had many more such things. She pointed round the room, she for yourself. She indicated that the narrator might see for herself those valuable things. I had no need to follow her hand, means the narrator says that it was useless for her to follow the indication of the girl because those things were of the narrator herself. I knew which things she meant, means the narrator says that she knew what things she wanted to show the narrator. I just looked at the still life over the tea table, means now the life was still at the tea table, means there was nothing to be done at the tea table, means now the intention of the girl and the narrator was something else other than drinking or taking tea. As a child, I had always fancied the apple on the pewter plate. Pewter plate means a metal, is a kind of metal alloy mixed with tin and lead. Actually, the girl, means the narrator, had always seen apple on it. But now there was no apple on it. Something else was offered. We used for everything, she said. Means the girl said that she used this plate for everything. Once we even ate off the plates hanging there. She indicated some of the plates that were hanging there and told that sometimes she used those plates that were hanging on the wall. I wanted to so much, but it wasn't anything special. Means she told that she wanted to use them, but there was nothing special in those things that were hanging on the wall. I found the burn mark on the tablecloth. Now I have told you the girl was, means the narrator was looking for the burn mark and now she found it. The girl looked questioningly at me, means the girl, means the daughter of Mrs. Darling, looked at the narrator as if she wanted to ask a question. Looked at me questioningly, means in a manner as if she wanted to ask a question. Yes, I said. You get so used to touching all these lovely things in the house, you hardly look at them anymore. Means the narrator said, when you become habitual of looking all these things every day, after that you don't want to see them anymore. Now we have to come up to the next page, but before we come up to the next page, let me explain to you some of the difficult words that are in this page. Now dear students, I have written some of the words on the board to explain to you. First one is Hanukkah. Hanukkah actually is a Jewish light festival, but here it means candle holder. Second one is Muggy. Muggy means of dampness. Then pewter plate. Pewter plate means plate made of tin and lead. It is a kind of alloy. Then followed. Followed means went behind. And the last one is horrified. Horrified means afraid or in fear. Now dear students, let us resume the portion we were reading. Now the text is on your screen. You only notice when something is missing because it has to be repaired or because you have lent it, for example. Means when you become habitual of seeing the same things every day, you stop noticing them. But when something is missing or you have given it for repair, you remember it. Or if you have given it to somebody else, you notice this thing that the particular thing is missing. Again, I heard the unnatural sound of my voice and I went on. I remember my mother once asked me if I would help her polish the silver. It was a very long time ago and I was probably bored that day, or perhaps I had to stay at home because I was ill, as she had never asked me before. I asked her which silver she meant, and she replied, surprised, that it was the spoons, forks and knives, of course, and that was the strange thing. I didn't know the cutlery we ate of every day was silver. Means once the narrator heard the abnormal sound of her own voice. Means once more the narrator heard the abnormal sound of her own voice and she went on. Means she kept on thinking. Now she remembers her past. When once her mother had asked her to help her polish the silver cutlery. This was a very long time ago and perhaps the narrator was bored or tired that day. She had to stay at home because she was feeling ill and her mother had never asked her before polish the cutlery. Means this was the first time her mother had asked her to polish cutlery. Cutlery means forks, spoons, etc. The narrator asked her mother which silver she meant. Surprisingly, her mother replied. Means her mother was very surprised and she replied that it was spoons, forks and knives. Now it was a strange thing to the narrator because she did not know that the cutlery she used every day was made of silver. Means this was the first time the narrator came to know that the cutlery was made of silver. The girl laughed again. Means the daughter of Mrs. Darling laughed again. Means up to it the narrator was thinking of her past. Now she is in present. I bet you don't know it is either. I looked intently at her. Means the daughter of Mrs. Darling said that she could bet that the narrator did not know anything about the cutlery. I looked at her. Means the narrator looked at the daughter of Mrs. Darling very carefully, very cautiously. What we eat with. Means the daughter of Mrs. Darling wanted to express her superiority, asking whether the narrator knew that she used silver. Means silver cutlery. Well, do you know? The narrator, instead of replying, asked her if she knew. Means if the daughter of Mrs. Darling knew about that. She hesitated. Means the daughter of Mrs. Darling hesitated for a moment. She walked to the sideboard. Means she went to the sideboard and wanted to open a drawer. Means she wanted to open a drawer. I look, it's in there. She said that she would look. Perhaps it was there. I jumped up. Means the narrator jumped up. I was forgetting the time. Means the narrator had not paid attention to time. I must catch my train. Means now she had to catch her train. She had her hand on the drawer. Means the hand of the daughter of Mrs. Darling was still on the drawer. Don't you want to wait for my mother? Means the daughter of Mrs. Darling asked the narrator if she did not want to wait for her mother. No, I must go. I walked to the door. The narrator replied that she had to go. She went to the door. The girl pulled the drawer open. Means pulling the drawer, the girl opened it. I can find my own way. The narrator said that she could find her own way. As I walked down the passage, I heard the jiggling of spoons and forks. Means when she was on the way, she could hear the clinking sound of spoons and forks. At the corner of the road, I looked up at the nameplate. Means once more at the corner of the road, she looked at the nameplate, Marconi Street. Means it was written on the nameplate, Marconi Street. This word was written. It said, means it was written there. I had been at number 46. the address was correct. Means she had not gone to the wrong house. The number of this house was 46 as it was told her by her mother. So the address was correct. But now I didn't want to remember it anymore. Means now the narrator did not want to remember this address. I wouldn't go back there because the objects that are linked in your memory with the familiar life of former times instantly lose their value when severed from them. Severed means separated, cut, detached. Means now the narrator says that she wanted to forget her past. And what should I have done with them in a small rented room where the sets of blackout paper still hung along the windows? Means now the cutlery was useless for her because now she lived in a small rented room. Rented room means hired room where the pieces of black colored paper were hanging along the windows. And no more than a handful of cutlery fitted in the narrow table drawer. Means now what she needed was only a handful of cutlery because she could not put more than it in the small drawer of her rented room. I resolved to forget the address of all the things I had to forget. That would be the easiest. Means the narrator decided to forget the address of Mrs. Darling. Besides, she wanted to forget everything of her past because to forget her past was the easiest thing she could do to live a happy life. Thus, the story took a sudden and unexpected end. Dear students, look at the board. The first question is, how was the narrator convinced that she had made no mistake and had reached the right address? And the answer is, the narrator looked at the green cardigan with wooden buttons. She knew that it was her mother's. Thus, she was convinced that she had reached the right address. And the second question is, who was Mrs. Darling? And the answer is, Mrs. Darling was an old friend of the narrator's mother. Her mother told her that Mrs. Darling would keep their things safe if they were sent to a shelter house. And the third question is, why did Mrs. Darling knowingly refuse to recognize the narrator? And the answer is, Mrs. Darling knowingly refused to recognize the narrator because she knew that the narrator might claim her belongings and Mrs. Darling did not want to return the antiques to the narrator. And the fourth question is, why did the narrator go to number 46 Marconi Street? And the answer is, the narrator went to number 46 Marconi Street because her mother had given her antiques to the owner of this house, and now the narrator wanted to take her antiques back. Thus, dear students, I know that you must have written the answers of these questions. Dear students, the fifth question is, describe the narrator's second visit. And the answer is, the narrator's first visit went in vain. On the second visit, Mrs. Darling's daughter opened the door. She here refers to the narrator. That is to say, the narrator saw her own antiques, but now she did not feel connected to these things. She quickly returned from there. Dear students, let us take some more questions having only one word answer. Actually, such questions are asked in two ways. First, there may be a direction for you to choose the most appropriate alternative, or the direction may be to fill in the blanks with the most appropriate word. Be careful, you have to choose the word according to your textbook. Here we have taken some questions, and the first one is the age of Mrs. Darling's daughter was. You have to choose the right answer, and the options are 16 years, 14 years, 13 years, 15 years. 15 years is the correct answer. I know, dear students, that you are able to answer these questions. I have only to verify the options. The second one is the cardigan had wooden buttons, steel buttons, golden buttons, no buttons. The cardigan had wooden buttons is the correct answer. The third one is the border of the white pot was silver, bronze, gold, iron. Dear students, gold is the correct answer. The fourth one is the cutlery was made of gold, silver, steel, plastic. Dear students, the correct answer is silver. And the fifth one is I sat down and stared at the woolen cardigan, cloth, sweater, tablecloth. Dear students, you have read the story. Remember, she was searching for the burn mark. Therefore, tablecloth is the correct answer. And the sixth one is the girl had a broad like her mother, broad back like her mother, front like her mother, eyes like her mother, face like her mother, and the correct option is broad back like her mother. Okay, dear students. Now, dear students, one more question is there on the board, and this is for self-practice. The question is the short story, The Address by Morgan & Co. teaches us not to regret the past. Do you agree? Give reasons for your answer. Means you have to answer this question by yourself. Besides, dear students, you should read the next lesson so that when it is start, you may understand it well. Thanks for watching us.